Welcome, friends, to another late night edition of Crime Time with DutyRon. Guys and girls, if you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon when I go live or upload another video. Hey, tonight we're going to talk about the conflict of interest in the Bryan Kohberger attorney situation. You know, there's that whole conversation. Xana's mom, Cara Northington, was represented by Ann Taylor. We're going to get into that in a minute, but we'll also I want to talk to you about the interview that Banfield did last night with Cara Northington. I want to get your thoughts and your feelings on that interview. It was 10 o'clock on Banfield, and I'm going to let you guys know how I felt about it, and it wasn't good. But before we get into that, I want to say a special thank you to you, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, the folks who positively engage in Crime Time with DutyRon. This community is a great place because of you, not because of me solely alone and Ed Wallace. It's because of you and the engagement that you guys provide this community. So we give thanks and praise to you guys each and every day. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joining, the moderators, the replay viewers, the folks who leave super thanks, and the super chatters. You guys are leaving super love, and we greatly appreciate it. Without your support, we can't make this channel possible. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Fuzzy Doxy, great to see you. Diane B, across the street. I could throw a brick at her window, but I wouldn't do that. She could throw a rock at mine and break it. So that's how close we are. Me and Diane B, we go back 27 years. So welcome in to the live stream. Beamer 650, True Facts. Leah Simpson is here. Thank you so much. Q A Quail, great to see you, and thank you for joining. Hey, listen, I was on the on text messaging earlier this evening, well, probably just about 35, 40 minutes ago, with Miss Burkhart. Andrea has been on this show and a guest. She's a criminal defense attorney in the state of Washington. And I asked her outright, because as you guys know, Ed and I are everything detective related, you know, crime scene related and so forth. Ed's a DNA and forensic expert, but we're not experts when it comes to criminal defense. So I went right straight to her to get her thoughts on this conflict of interest. You know, to give a little backstory on it is, you know, Xana Kanodel's mom, Cara Northington, had drug charges that were in the past that Ann Taylor was assigned legal defense counsel. She was part of the legal aid team. So Cara Northington could not afford an attorney, so the court appointed one for her. She didn't get to pick her attorney. It was appointed to her. Fast forward to Bryan Kohberger being arrested on December 30th of 2022. Ann Taylor was already Cara Northington's attorney of record, appointed by the court. And then Bryan Kohberger comes before the court, and she now gets appointed his legal defense because she is one of two capital punishment qualified attorneys in the state of Idaho, or in that region there of Idaho, northwestern Idaho. So a lot of us are all up in arms and pissed off that, hey, how could she have represented Xana Kanodel's, who was murdered by Bryan Kohberger? Xana Kanodel's mom, Cara Northington, was represented by the same attorney. It's got to be a conflict of interest, right? And other families. Sammy saying now Maddie's dad, and so, yeah. Listen. So I didn't have the answer to it because I didn't know if it was Heather, whatever. Thank you for becoming a channel member. So Angela Ang, good to see you. Sean B, Jennifer Nobles, everybody's piling in. Thank you for that. So I asked Andrea, and she basically said that there's no conflict of interest. So I was surprised by it, but yet I didn't know. So I asked her to come on with me last minute, but she's tied up, but she's going to do 2 videos probably on her channel. When she does those 2 videos, I'll share them with you. But essentially, the text messaging that I had back and forth with her, and she was so kind enough to really, and don't kill the messenger here, because Andrea is a criminal defense attorney. I'm not a criminal defense attorney. So I outright asked her, and I asked her if she can explain it to me simply, and it's not an easy answer, but according to Idaho code, there's no conflict, and so I just want to read to you guys a little bit of what she said to me. So it's a lot of Sixth Amendment stuff, and she's going to again, she's going to go over it, and she basically breaks it down. She'll give it to you in layman's terms. The simplest way to explain it is it's they aren't on opposite sides of the dispute. So the simplest way, this is Andrea talking to me. She said, Ron, the simplest way to explain this is that they aren't, meaning Cara Northington and Bryan Kohberger, aren't on opposite sides of the dispute. They're both opposite the state in separate cases, one being a drug case, one being a murder case. Actual conflicts are based on the idea that lawyers can't adequately represent either client when their clients have opposite positions on a single issue. And these are 2 separate issues. It's not a single issue. It's a drug charge for Miss Cara Northington and a murder charge for Bryan Kohberger. So these are state-appointed attorneys. In other words, if you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. These are court-appointed attorneys. They aren't private attorneys. So, I mean, that was the quickest way she can explain it. It gets a lot more complicated than that, of course, because potential conflicts can be disqualifying when they are significant and material. But so at the same time, again, she explains it in layman's terms, but she is going to she's going to break it down in 2 separate videos. And I asked her if I could share those videos with you guys. And she said, yeah, of course, we'll go over to her channel. We'll watch them, and we'll listen to what she has to say. I listened to her talk on another channel, and I also listened to Peter Tragos, the lawyer, and they all broke it down, and I understand it. Basically, she recused herself from the lesser case because there's only 2 capital punishment criminal defense attorneys in that region, and she decided to recuse herself of the lesser drug charge case to represent Kohberger in the capital punishment case, and she put the paperwork in with the court, and the judge signed off on it. So it's not like it's anything that's backdoor and sneaky. She's not trying to make her name for herself by representing Kohberger, because legal aid attorneys, the ones that are appointed by the courts, they do make money, but they're in the legal aid spot. It's not a private counsel. Private counsel are the guys and girls who make the big bucks. Like Joe Murray, but legal aid are getting scale or whatever the court decides to pay them. Some get more than others, but it's not like it's a Johnny Cochran law firm. So let's move on here, because again, I wanted to just get that out of the way. A lot of people have been sending messages on DutyRon.com. Hey, what's your thoughts? Teresa B says it seems sketchy, but if it's under the letter of the Idaho code and law, then it could seem sketchy all it wants to us. But if you don't have a good command of the law of state of Idaho, we could say that something doesn't smell right here. But as long as it goes along the guise of the law, then and Andrea even said, the chances of a what did she say? How did she say it? The chances of an appeal it's the Sixth Amendment stuff that matters, and the standard is so high as to be a pipe dream. She said 99.9% of the time, these appeals are thrown out. So if somebody was to appeal it and say, "Oh, this is a conflict," and it was fought legally, 99.9% of the time, it's just a pipe dream, and it won't go through. All right, I see Sleuthy is here. Ruth Ann Griffith, Diane B. I already said hello to Diane. Susie, hello, Miss Donna Marie. Thank you for all you do. Don Hagerman is here. Sean B. Oh, wow. All the great ones are piling in. Future, Debbie. Thank you, Beth Hammer and Vicky. All right. Hey, listen, let me ask you guys, by a show of hands, how many of you saw the Banfield interview last night? It was 5 minutes and 58 seconds of cringe. In my book, Crime on a Dime, thank you for being here. I like that screen name. It's catchy. Princess Mitch, Jeffrey Crowley, and all of you guys. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you. How many saw the Banfield interview with Cara Northington? That's Xana Canolo's mom. By a show of hands, put a 1 in the chat if you saw it. Jojo, thanks for being present for duty. PFD, if you saw it, put a 1. If you haven't seen it, put a 2. And I'm going to do a Q&A with you guys at the end of this, because I'm not going to be able to be here that long, because this old man's got to go to bed soon. 6 o'clock, the alarm goes off. It's kind of early for me. Okay, so some haven't and some have. Crime on a Dime says 2. Twin Mommy hasn't seen it. Yeah, she looked lost, but not only did she look lost, Mom looked very sickly looking, very not good from her drug problem. It's clear and evident. I've been around in the police department. I've been around different various drug users, and she's facing charges for drugs, and it's clear and evident that she's not well. She's in her 40s, and it's a shame. I feel horrible for her that she was, I felt, exploited by the news. How Banfield decided to put her on is beyond me. And listen, I'm usually not critical. I like News Nation, but like that was, it wasn't a good look. I mean, I think that's the best way I could put it. But pushing Cara Northington, Xana's birth mom, pushing her into questions about Bryan Kohberger just took it to a different level for me. And I could listen, this is my opinion. If you feel that it was okay, don't feel afraid to say, well, I thought it was totally fine, because that's what's great about everything here, is that we can express our opinions and we can agree to disagree. So if you think it was okay, let me know down below in the comment section. If you feel it was not a good thing, I mean, I went over to Banfield and watched some of the comments in her comment section, and there weren't many that were complimentary. I'll say that. There definitely weren't many that were complimentary. So I'm going to play it. Mystery Maven, good to see you. Thank you for joining. Good to see you, and good to see you here. And now you got to go. It's okay. We understand. Thank you. So the reason I want to play it is because I want whoever's watching this video to see why I said that I felt it was in poor taste and that she was exploited. I think that this needs to be. People ask me about it. I received like 25 direct messages about this. So I'm not going to play the whole thing. Again, I want you guys to see just a little piece of this. She did ask some questions. We come to find out Xana's sister Jasmine went to WSU, and she was there. She was there while Kohberger was, walking amongst them unbeknownst. So it was really horrible to hear and see it, So I definitely, I wanted to scale and pool the chat to see what everyone's thoughts were on it. But again, it was really horrible. But she played at 10 o'clock last night on Banfield. She played a good 30 minutes of it. And then it was condensed here to 5 minutes. But what I want to play is what Banfield talks about in the beginning of this 5-minute interview. She goes on to talk about the conflict of interest. And, Banfield is, she's got attorney. She's an attorney, or was an attorney at one point. So she was pushing the conflict of interest narrative, right? It's just amazing that she initially here, before she starts talking to Cara Northington, she starts talking about how Ann Taylor is in the wrong here. So I don't know. I got mixed vibes from it, I definitely got mixed vibes from it. And again, I want people to actually see why I'm being critical of this thing. And that's the only reason I'm going to play a small piece of it. I'm not going to play the whole 5 minutes because I couldn't actually watch through the whole 5 minutes. But let's see. Joe Murray is here. I want to look at the chat quick before I play a little bit of this. And part 2 is tonight. I missed it. I wouldn't watch part 2. I wouldn't watch it. Part 1 was enough. It was hard enough for me to watch part 1. Let me see what Joe Murray has to say, because I always like to see what he has to say. I'll highlight his chat. The power to waive the privilege is with the client, mom. If the mom shared information about her daughter and her daughter's life relevant to the case pursuant to the attorney-client privilege. But Joe, I think that this attorney, Ann Taylor, recusing herself from the case. Andrea explained it to me, and she said it's 2 separate matters, and she's a public defender. So public defenders get appointed by the court, and if she represented Cara Northington in a drug matter, and we don't know how far she got in that process. We don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if you know, but I don't. Maybe it was just one appearance. We don't know. But she recused herself. The court, the judge looked at it and okayed it. And I'm going to listen to what the attorneys have to say about it. So, again, when Andrea Burkhart is going to upload a video, I think tomorrow, a 2-part video. Mystic Rogue, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you. So again, even with the power of attorney, I see people in the chat about the power of attorney. Again, it's a drug case, and she is a criminal. She's legal aid, and she gets appointed by the courts. And in these small places, there's only a certain amount of lawyers. It's not like there's 100 lawyers waiting to be. And these cases come up like this, where they represented somebody. And again, I didn't know anything about it, but when I had a conversation with Andrea on text message, it was a little bit more clear to me. And I have some of her interviews that she did, which would make it even clearer if you listen to them. So I'm going to share some of that stuff too. But just let's take a listen to what Banfield says before she puts Cara Northington on. So yeah, I watch Peter Tragos. I watch Pete. So D Love of God says, at DutyRon, please, was Pete Tragos' excellent review of the interview? He didn't like it either. Yeah, he didn't like the interview. Who could like this interview? There's no way that you could like this interview. It was total exploitation. She didn't need to put that woman on, especially the condition that she's in and the amount of pain that she must be going through. And listen, let's call this as we see it. If you are suffering or fighting addiction, the smallest little things can trigger you to go back and have a relapse and go back to using drugs. So if she's in a place where she's trying to fight and get herself right and trying to get off whatever drug of choice she's using or was using, these instances, it could be something so small where an interview gets her stressed out that she goes and gets high again. So there was no need. She lost her daughter, whether she was estranged from her or not. Lost her daughter to a brutal murder by knife attack on November 13th, and here we are in January. On the 25th, her airing this, airing this interview, which could have put her and set her right back to square one. So I know this from being around people with, fighting these demons, whether it's heroin or cocaine or whatever the drug of choice is. It was just shocking to see it, because it really gave you a bird's eye view of how careless and non-caring the media is, just to get a story out. So it's horrific. Yeah, Joey Brooklyn is here, everybody. He's no longer Joey Brooklyn. He's Joey Long Island. Good to see you, Joe. Yeah, she's fighting for her life. She's in the fight for her life, Lisa Smith says. Let me look at the chat real quick. It's still her daughter, regardless. Yeah, she gave birth to her. That's her mom. I don't care what the situation is. Queen Elizabeth says addiction is through the roof in America. It can be your kid next. It's through the roof in the world, across the globe, not just in America. There's the addiction and drug problems across the globe. LK says, don't promote a video you don't agree with. I'm giving context here of why I made the statement that I'm making. If you don't like it, LK, that's your opinion. But the last time I checked, this is my show. I'm doing this video. You're not. But I appreciate that comment. But I'm setting up what I said about Banfield. So I'm going to show a small piece of it. If you don't like it, I would say just leave. Montana Mama, thank you for the super love. She sends in a $10 super chat and she says, love the integrity this show has. Yeah, listen, I'm not here to, everybody won't agree with me on 100% of the things I do, but this is my thought process. And again, the mods that are in here, if anybody is being disrespectful towards anybody, just do me a favor, just show them the door. It's as simple as that. Canadian Cookie says Ashley Banfield doesn't seem to have no boundaries whatsoever. On this interview, I agree. KCG says Banfield released more just 15 minutes ago. It's pitiful. Thank you. Don Hagerman says, awesome. Always awesome, DutyRon. Appreciate it. Hollis Evans says, let's go to the videotape. All right, guys. But in the beginning, I want you to pay really close attention, because she really tries to obliterate Ann Taylor, the defense attorney. And I'm not sure, if she was doing this to appeal to Cara Northington. I don't know. I don't know what the thought process is here, but the whole thing was horrible. And again, if this gets you triggered, then I would say, then I would say step out maybe and come back. All right. Where is it? Here it is. All right. This is from last night, not tonight. I won't even go and look at tonight's, but, all right, so pay attention to the beginning of this, and I'm not going to play the whole thing with the mom. Once the mom comes on, I'm going to probably just a minute of it, just to give you guys context of why I said it's in poor taste, and then we'll shut it down. But listen to how Banfield goes on about the defense attorney who's representing Bryan Kohberger now, no longer representing Cara Northington. She's going to be represented by another legal aid appointed by the court. All right, here we go.
There have been conflicts of interest with attorneys for far less than this. I mean, let me give you an example. If you think that perhaps some point you want to divorce your spouse and you have a conversation with a couple of lawyers, your spouse can no longer retain any of those lawyers just because you had a conversation. So this woman, Cara Northington, whose daughter was violently murdered in Idaho, one of the Idaho Four, those 4 students killed in Moscow at the University of Idaho. She is now facing the reality that the person she trusted most with 4 of her cases is now representing her daughter's accused killer. Here's that conversation.
So, Cara, what was your first reaction when you learned that your former attorney is representing the man accused of killing your daughter?
I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken because I trusted her. She pretended that she was wanting to help me, and to find that out that she's representing him, I can't even convey how betrayed I feel.
So it goes on to continue the path of talking about how bad it is and how it was not right. And you know, again, when I talked to criminal defense attorney Andrea Burkhart, she said that she was livid about this interview. And Peter Tragos, the lawyer, you know, he also was livid about the interview that Banfield. This is not my forte. Again, I look to the pros on this thing. So, you know, like here, Joe Murray's in the chat, and he's a criminal defense attorney from New York. Andrea's from out in Washington State, and she also knows about Idaho law. It's the next state over. Joe says the privilege belongs to the client. So there you have it. Joe Murray chiming in. Can this lead to an acquittal or a mistrial? As far as what I'm seeing here from 2 criminal defense attorneys, one in Florida, one in the state of Washington, they said no. They said the possibility, it's like she called it a pipe dream, and it would be a 99.9% chance that this, if there was an appeal, it's a Sixth Amendment stuff, and the matters and that standard is so high as to be a pipe dream 99.9% of the time. So the appeals would be a 99.9% squash. The appeal would not go through. But I would love to hear what Joe Murray has to say. Joe, I wish he could call in to the show and talk, because I know he would maybe give a flip side to this thing. But I don't have that knowledge. So, but I just didn't like that interview. I thought it was in bad taste. I can't say that I will be boycotting News Nation because I like Bryan Enton. I think Bryan does a great job. But yeah, I would love to have Joe call in. But you know, we're all upset about this because it's like, how dare you? This is the thought process, right? How dare Ann Taylor represent Kohberger after she tried and took herself off the case of representing Cara Northington, which is Xana's mom. Her client now that she's representing killed her daughter, or, you know, is alleged to have killed her daughter. So it's like, I don't know. I'm conflicted on it because I didn't know what was right or wrong legally in the letter of the Idaho Code and the Idaho statute. But when I reached out, you know, I reached out to Andrea, and she broke it down for me, you know. So yeah, everybody feels it's wrong. I mean, let me know in the comments down below, or let me know in the comment section here in the live chat how you feel about it. I always like to get everybody's side, you know. She's a qualified death penalty attorney. I discussed that, Maui Swift. She's one of 2. So why couldn't she have recused herself from Kohberger as well, stayed with the mom, Cara Northington, and then they assigned a new, the second death penalty, capital punishment expert, because the way I read it, there was two. So what was wrong with taking her completely off the case and letting the second legal aid attorney, Joe? I wish I could get Joe on here to hear it. You know, I know it's a high profile case, but if you have two attorneys that are qualified for capital punishment cases, then why not go to the second one? You know, I don't know. That's my thought process, and I wish that I had a professional here to discuss it. You know. But again, the reason I played that small piece to show Cara Northington, it really just a minute of her on there, was to just give people that are coming on to the replay of this video, and hey, why is Ron saying that he thought it was in bad taste? I'm saying that I feel like Cara Northington was exploited by the producers at News Nation and you know, Ashley Banfield. I thought it was a bad look for her to put her on there in the condition that she was in, and in the mental state that she has to be in, fighting, you know, fighting this drug addiction and disease that afflicts so many people across the globe. I would have took one look at her and said, you know what, let's not do this interview. It's not a good time. You know, he'll call in. All right. Angela, I'll share the link. I know Joe. I only got another 20 minutes because I got to go to bed, but I would love to hear what Joe has to say about this. I mean, I know he's saying it's the attorney, it's the clients. I'm going to copy and paste it in the chat. Ange, will you be able to grab it in the chat? But then again, maybe I'll send it to you privately. I'll send it to you right now, Ange. All right, Joe Murray's coming. Joe Murray. Hold on. I'm not putting it in the chat because I don't want a bunch of people jumping in. So we're going to get criminal defense attorney Joe Murray. Joe is going to probably have our head spinning here tonight. I have a feeling. But I love him. So invite guest, copy. It's coming to you, Ange, on text message. Okay. Ange. There it is. I sent it to you, Ange. All right. Hi, Michelle. Good to see you, girl. Friday, DH. Banfield will do. She's got a bad. I mean, and she put out a second piece tonight. Is that confirmed? Did she at 10 o'clock? It's 10:50. So Banfield's still going on right now. Is it confirmed that Banfield played part 2 of this? Oh man, this is too much for the mother to handle right now. Yeah, Ruth, absolutely. Everybody who doesn't love Joe Murray. Joe Murray is the man. He's awesome. So Andrea Burkhart was on the Pascal show. Does anybody know Pascal? So she was on that Pascal show. I hope I'm saying it right. And she gave a breakdown of this whole thing. Like, I'm trying to find it. Let me get the Pascal show. Hold on. All right. I'm going to search for it. So she was on with him and gave a you know, like a synopsis of this. Here. See if I can get this to the part where she comes on. Where is she? So she joined him and she talked about the case. Why am I not finding it? Let's see. Oh, here it is. So let me put it on. We're waiting for Joe Murray, by the way. Live stream. Where is she? Oh, here it is. There's Andrea. All right.
her this.
Can you guys hear
Now,
this?
how true is that? Just as far as
interest.
All right. Here's Andrea talking about
A
it. Let me get it to where she's first starting to talk. All right. So since I don't know Pascal show, I'm just going to play the audio so you guys can hear it. He seems like a really nice guy. I'll message him that I played it, and I'll give credit in the description. But here's Andrea. Here's the audio. This is him asking her about conflict of interest.
That's the concern that folks have. So fortunately, we do have very specific rules that tell us, what are disqualifying conflicts of interest and how do you evaluate whether you have one. So I actually became aware of this situation on my own a little bit more than a week ago. I had heard some of these rumors about Cara Kernodle and her history. So I went looking at those records, and I happened to see, Ann Taylor had been counsel of record, not just in this most recent one, but in some prior cases as well. And I do want to mention also, just from my standpoint as a criminal defense attorney, most of these charges, from my perspective, they are quite petty. This is not like serious high-level criminal enterprise stuff. Right. But anyway, putting that aside, so I did become aware of that, and obviously knew this is going to be something that people are going to have an interest in. So I did take a look at it. This is the type of situation that probably seems strange to a lot of people who are not in a small rural community, where we are often just a few degrees of separation from everybody else. And so from my perspective, we tend to have to deal a lot more with kind of the nitty-gritty ins and outs of these conflict rules, because there's just a much higher likelihood that you're going to get appointed to a case where you have these, potential connections and relationships and things like that have to be accommodated. So I have looked at this situation. I have looked at the information that's available. I've looked at the Idaho rules of professional conduct. In my opinion, there is not currently a conflict of interest, at least just based on that relationship itself. The fact that, she is simultaneously representing Bryan Kohberger and, the mother of one of Bryan Kohberger.
See, he seems confused by it too. Pascal is like, wait a minute. What did you just say? Like, so I was in the same boat. I was like, wait a minute. So there's nothing? So I'll let the rest of this play until Joe comes on, because we're just waiting for Joe.
Alleged victims. That relationship in and of itself may seem surprising, because it may, seem counterintuitive to people, but in and of itself, that doesn't create a conflict of interest. What creates a conflict of interest is having directly adverse interests, meaning basically you are on opposite sides of a legal issue. That is not the case here. They are both defendants, against the state of Idaho. The state of Idaho is the adversary. The other situation where a conflict can arise is if there's enough of a connection between these representations that confidential information you obtain from one of your clients could potentially be something that would benefit one of your other clients. And so that puts you in a situation where you can't really fulfill your obligations to both of them, and so it's just part of the principle of being a lawyer. You don't get to pick and choose which one, both of your clients are entitled to your duties of confidentiality and loyalty. So if those do come into conflict, there can be a problem there. But so based on the information that we have right now, which is nothing more than that there is, a family relationship here, that, in my opinion, no, under the Idaho rules, is not enough to constitute a conflict of interest.
Well, it's interesting, because if it's not a conflict of interest, could this be a conflict of interest? If you get what
I like that he did that.
Opportunity for her to sit there and go, well, this is an opportunity to get my name on the map, letting people know who I am. If I get this man to walk, Ann Taylor will be Ann Taylor, right? Mm-hmm. She did the impossible, the most impossible magic trick in the world, proving that there is reasonable doubt, or convincing a jury, that there is reasonable doubt and that this man could walk. Could that be the other reason, though, too, that she said, this is a bigger case and I can make more money in the future from doing this one? What are your thoughts?
That was a
Well,
great
you
thing.
can never rule out, a self-serving kind of motivation like that. It's just not particularly consistent with somebody who has chosen a 20-year career in public defense. If she wanted to seek out high-profile cases and, make a name for herself, you don't typically do that by taking on, one of the most criticized and types of positions that you can have.
All right, Joe Murray is waiting for us. So you basically heard her say, in her opinion, she says she feels no conflict of interest. We're going to hear what Joe Murray has to say. I don't think Joe's going to have the camera on. It's just going to be his audio. So let's add Joe Murray in for his commentary. Look, Mary already is saying, I don't like this lady. Just because she doesn't tell you what you want to hear doesn't mean that you have to, that you don't have, that you got to not like her. She's giving it to you from her professional opinion. She's a criminal defense attorney and she works in the state of Washington, which is right next to Idaho. So here's Joe Murray. Joe, how are you, baby?
Hey, Ron, how are you?
Good. Thank you for calling in, Joe. I know that you have a lot to say about this, and I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, it's an interesting issue. It's not something that I come across a lot. The facts are just a little bizarre. I mean, this attorney represents the mother of the decedent, and there are multiple cases, right, that she represents her in?
She said they're minor drug cases, at least according to Andrea. So I'm not sure of how far the cases are along. That's why I was saying before you came up, could it have been she represented her for one or two appearances? I don't know, but
Yeah.
the mom, Cara Northington on Banfield, said that she signed power of attorney over to this attorney. Have you heard of that? Does that make it an additional bizarreness to the twist of this?
It sure does, because
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, the power of attorney covers a lot of different areas. So, you'd have to look at the actual document to what she's giving her authority to deal with. It could be property issues, it could be anything really. So it could be financial. So
Right.
you'd have to look at the scope of the power of attorney. It could just be a very limited power of attorney just to sign authorizations to get medical records.
Right. I think that's
so
what
we
it
don't
is,
know.
because she might have been. People are saying, and I haven't been able to confirm this, nor did I try to look at it. But people were saying that the mom, Cara Northington, may have a failure to appear warrant out. Like she failed to appear for her last court date.
Right.
So she may have a bench warrant. But I think that maybe she was going to be mandated by the courts to do inpatient drug jail time.
Right.
Mandated treatment,
Treatment.
drug treatment kind of court. And that's when I used to see that in Queens, because you remember, I think, but right before AP5, there was when you walk down the hallway there and you come in the side entrance, there's that drug court.
Yeah, QMTC.
Yeah, QMTC, exactly. So I've been in QMTC many times, and I heard talks of power attorneys being signed over if you have real property or if you have assets. If you have nobody to give a power attorney to of your personal business, is that what power attorney she's talking about, or is it?
Well, yeah. So I, just to get because medical evidence is protected under HIPAA, you need to get HIPAA authorized releases. But for some reason, I don't know why they would do it, unless because they're incarcerated or they're in treatment and they don't have access to them. So they just do a power of attorney for that limited purpose. If I need to get records, I can get them.
Right. Let's unpack that. She hears cuffs. No, that's Joe's headphones, the little earbuds that he has in. It's going across his shirt, and you can hear it. That's what you're hearing. They're not cuffs.
Oh,
Joe
I'm sorry.
is not cuffing Angela. Angela's not handcuffed, or vice versa. That's not happening yet. So yeah, Joe, I feel like what Andrea said here, and I was playing the piece, I hope you heard it while you were waiting to come in, is she was saying that they're not on the same sides as, like a co-defendant. These are two separate cases. And being the fact that Ann Taylor recused herself from the lower level case, being the drug cases with Cara Northington, why wouldn't they just completely say, hey, in the best interest of justice, why don't we just put the second capital punishment attorney, because there's two of them that are qualified in that area. Why not put that second? Maybe she wasn't available or he wasn't available.
Well, that's a great observation because it touches on another issue that I am concerned with, and that's abandonment. An attorney is not supposed to abandon their client. If you leave your representation of a client, there has to be some type of cause. The most common thing is there's a breakdown in communication. Me and my client do not agree on how to proceed, or something arises within the context of your representation that now makes it too difficult to communicate where your client can, participate in the representation. So you need cause to get off the case. You can't just say, oh, I have a better case here, so I want to be replaced by someone else so I can take the better case. That's client abandonment, in my opinion.
But it would be abandonment if the court didn't give her proper representation. It said in the news report that I read that the court immediately assigned legal aid counsel to her.
Yeah, of course. But what is her cause for leaving the case? You're prejudicing the client, because if I meet with a client and they share confidential information, first of all, especially that this is a legal aid situation where the client did not choose the lawyer, there's a trust issue. And you develop a trust and rapport with the attorney. She shares all this information, and now the attorney says, okay, thanks anyway, I'm leaving.
Right.
So it prejudices the client. It causes a problem for the client now. How do I trust the next person coming in? So you really just can't decide, I don't want to represent this person, and don't worry, you'll get another lawyer. It's just not right to do to a client.
I saw so many arguments online. I saw so many arguments online, Joe, like people like, for Cara Northington saying, this is not right. And look, Alicia says she ditched Xana's mom because she saw huge fame and book deals and everything else if she took this case. How do you feel about that statement, Joe?
I mean, that I don't want to attack a lawyer. I mean, she must have her reasons why she did what she did.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she's just weighing the equities and saying, I could better help this person than that person.
Right.
I don't know. I don't want to attack her for that.
Yes.
But if that is the reason, that's terrible, that she's doing it for her own self-interest, because that's another, ethical violation. You're not supposed to act in your own self-interest. You're supposed to act in the best interest of your client.
Right. And let me ask you, Joe. So when she puts in the request to be recused from the case, it goes, and I'm just doing this for the audience here, Joe. Explain that process. So she writes out the paper, she submits it to the chief court clerk, or however she submits it, goes through the court, and the judge gets it, and the judge rules on it. Doesn't the judge look at the Idaho code and statute and the potential for this? Doesn't a judge take this into consideration and say, oh, wait, I got to step in here? Or do they not step in? Is this all done by legal aid and the prosecutor? Does the prosecutor have to agree to it, or is it just solely on the judge, Joe?
Well, yeah, that's a good issue to raise, and I don't know the details of the facts, so I apologize for that. However, I will say to you that before accepting that new case, excuse me, for Bryan Kohberger, she would have to recuse herself from the other case. So that application has to come first. And again, she'd have to state a reason for why she's leaving the case.
Right.
And that application would be made to the judge on notice to the prosecutor. And usually in a circumstance like that, you don't want to air out whatever difficulties you're having with your client. So you ask the judge, if I can present this to you ex parte meaning without letting the prosecutor know. And the judge will review it and make a determination. Okay, I think it's in the best interest that you do be relieved, and I'll appoint someone else.
Right.
So that has to happen first before she's even appointed to that second case.
Exactly. And, you know, a lot of people don't understand in the audience, you know, there's a lot of stuff going back and forth. So, you know, these attorneys, the court appointed attorneys, it's on like a rotation. When we had our 18B, we had the, you know, the legal aid in New York City, and I'm sure it's similar in these smaller areas. It's just less staff. But if someone comes into the court and they cannot afford an attorney, and it's shown that they do not have a job, do not have income, the court will appoint an attorney for you. So it gets done on a round robin basis. In other words, okay, you're up next. You're up next. It's that's how this thing goes. But in a smaller jurisdiction like this, Joe, there's not a pool of what we're used to seeing, where there's, you know, okay, you got 5 legal aid attorneys in AP5, you got 8 in AP6. You know, they're not afforded that in these smaller rural areas. So I think Andrea was saying that, you know, these potential conflict of interest things come up because a brother gets locked up, then another brother gets locked up, or a sister gets locked up, or a mother, and like different family members, and they're coming through the same court, right? So she made that point, and I kind of understood it, that, like, you know, these things happen. But some of the verbiage that she said in the state of Idaho, that the Sixth Amendment thing comes into play, and she said that she had to do 2 separate videos just to explain this.
Wow.
So, but I'm interested to see what Andrea puts out tomorrow in a 2-part series, and I'm going to be paying close attention to it because I always want to learn about this stuff. I don't know this side of it. I know, you know, going in and testifying before a grand jury, I've done that many times. I've been in many trials where, you know, first officer on the scene and so forth, at murder scenes and so forth. But when it comes to this stuff, I mean, like the way did you listen to the Banfield interview, or you didn't? I know you're busy. So
I listened to some of it, but then I got a phone call I had to take. But let me just say this, because you brought up a great point about the conflict of interest in multiple defendants. Like if you have a 5-defendant case, legal aid is going to be appointed because nobody can afford counsel. One organization cannot represent all these people. And in Queens, we have layers of representation. We have legal aid, Queens Legal Aid. Then we have something called Queens Law Associates. It's another nonprofit organization. They would take one of the defendants. And then we have what's called the 18B panel. These are private attorneys who get approved by a board at the Bar Association to serve on this 18B panel. So if there is a conflict where we have to go outside of both of these agencies to get other people, they'll be appointed. So it's entirely possible you'll have a legal aid attorney representing one defendant, you'll have a Queens Law Associates attorney representing another, and then 2 18B lawyers, because they're totally independent, representing the others. You have to maintain, you know, that separation. You can't have multiple people unless they waive it. That's what we call a Gomberg issue, where a judge would actually say, listen, I'm telling you, and I've done this with some of my clients, you know, that big Social Security disability case, they locked up 130 cops. I knew a lot of the cops, so they all wanted me to represent them. So the judge said in open court on the record, you are entitled to an attorney loyal exclusively and only to you. You have the right to waive that conflict and accept a dual representation, but you will not be able to use that to appeal. And, you know, they give them proper notice and warnings. And if they duly waive it, then you can engage in the dual representation. So you know, there's a lot of ethical considerations to consider, but in this case, I'm really troubled by the fact that the mother may have, I have to stress may have, shared information about her daughter, her living situation. It could be anything,
Right.
that now that privilege belongs to the mother. And in order for her to accept this new case, the mother has to waive that privilege and say, I have no objection to that. If
Right.
she does have an objection, then they have to present it to the judge and say, and again, this could be done ex parte, and say to the judge, because you don't want to reveal it to the prosecutor, in the context of my communications with my attorney, I shared this information, which I believe she could potentially use to benefit the defendant in the case against my daughter.
Right. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Absolutely. Look at what Gina puts up on the screen here. I heard Ann withdrew from Cara's case and did not notify her at all, and she had to hear secondhand from Reddit. That's what she said on the Banfield interview. So Cara Northington, Xana Canoro's mom, said that she didn't even know that her attorney was off the case because I guess, you know, how do they do that? Do they notify their clients via mail, by whatever source of contact that they have? Would they call them on the phone and say, you know, your case has been, your attorney has been reassigned, your new attorney assigned to your case is so-and-so. So I'd imagine they do it by mail, you know, regular, you know, post office mail, and also maybe by phone notification, right? If they had a contact.
Yeah, it's really I don't know, but perhaps I'm putting more, you know, more excuse me, more weight into this because I hold that relationship sacred. That is so important. They're entrusting you with their freedom.
Yes.
And in a death penalty case, they're entrusting you with their life. You have to take that sacred relationship and adhere to it, you know, in the most ethical and responsible way. You can't just willy-nilly, I don't want to be on this case anymore, I'm going to move to be relieved. That's wrong, and
Right.
that's sanctionable.
What we know is that through reporting I read, you know, in various journals, in the Wall Street Journal talked about it, in New York Times, it was in the Post. I read, you know, all of the papers here locally. On January 5th, when she recused herself and it was approved, a new attorney was assigned. And yes, there was somebody in the chat that said, does DutyRon know that Cara Northington had warrant for her arrest? I mentioned that with Joe. You must have just come into the broadcast, but we did. I did mention it. I spoke about it. That doesn't really, I feel, okay, so that is a part of this thing, but I'm not going to hold that over her head. Maybe she was having some issues where she didn't get back to court because of her current situation. So we have to all understand that, you know, again, she's not out. She's released on her own recognizance, as far as I know. And if she missed her court date, you know, bench warrants get issued on a regular basis every day.
Right.
It doesn't mean that that person is an evil monster that's on the run and some vicious felon. So she's got obvious drug problems, and you know, everybody has to understand that, you know, everyone's going through certain situations, certain issues. So you got to, and she lost her daughter on November.
It's so
13th.
true, Ron.
You know,
You hit it right on the head.
Yeah.
A circumstance like this, I could see, you know, and a bench warrant would come up a lot because the person is now checked into detox and they realize they had, you know, something going on. And I quite regularly in my drug cases will communicate with the prosecutor. I just want to let you know, my client checked into a detox. They're over at LIJ. They're getting, you know, and will not be able to appear.
Monsters. These are people who have addiction issues.
Yeah.
And you know, you can't treat them like subhumans, you know. And the bottom line here is that everyone's really quick to attack people because of their current situations.
Yeah.
We don't know what holds tomorrow for all of us, you know. Some of these people have had affluent lifestyles, and just things have just gone downhill for him, you know. So I've been around it a lot. You've been around it a lot, Joe, and we have to be empathetic towards you know, their recoveries and so forth. But
I just want to go back real quick, Ron, because the vernacular you're using, you keep saying recused, and you may be right. I don't know, because there's a difference between recusing and being relieved from a case. You know, you could be relieved from a case because of some other issue. A recusal of a case, it implies there was a conflict that existed that you had to remove yourself from. It may be, that's why I don't know, and I apologize, I don't know. But did they actually say she recused herself, or she was relieved from the case?
Yeah, I mean, the way I read it, and that's why I keep using those words, is because that's what I read. So again, and people are saying she excused herself. You know, she just said that essentially because of the current situation and, you know, being assigned to. But that's what I'm really stuck, is that if they assigned her this case and they knew that she had, maybe it slipped and maybe they didn't know it. Or maybe they didn't catch it right away, because as soon as Kohberger touched ground in Idaho, they had to be planning for him coming there. The extradition hearing was happening. Idaho knew he was coming there. You know, so they had ample time to look at her caseload. I'm talking about Ann Taylor, and everyone's jumping on this defense attorney as well. I don't agree with that either, you know, because we don't know how this all went down. We're just looking at it on face value of what they're presenting to us. But they had a chance to look at her caseload and say, hey, wait a minute. Whoa. People in the chat are saying that, you know, not only did she represent Cara Northington, but also other family members. So
that's not good.
Russo is saying she withdrew. Okay, so she's off the case. Tomorrow we'll look into a little bit stronger, but I'm going to go and review some of the other people who have covered this on YouTube. That Pete Tragos down in Florida, I know he covered it, and Andrea, she spoke with the Pascals show, but she's also going to be uploading some videos herself, and she's been doing quite a bit of research into Idaho statutes and the law there. And as you know, Joe, it varies from state to state.
Of course. Sadly, because I really do think that is such an important, having been the beneficiary of it when I got in trouble, it is such an important relationship. You have to trust your lawyer. You have to trust that what I share with my lawyer goes nowhere. It will never be used in any other context, you know, to hurt me in any way. And if you start willy-nilly switching back and forth and recusing and allowing this conflict situation, even the appearance of impropriety, it really undermines the relationship that needs to be in place in order to, you know, the constitutional right to effective assistance of counsel. It's not just the assistance of counsel, it's effective assistance. And when you undermine the sanctity of that attorney-client privilege, you take away the effectiveness of the assistance of counsel.
Well said, Joe. Well said. Hey, I wanted to get your opinion while I have you here, and then I'll wrap it up. What's your thoughts on Banfield interviewing Xana Kanodel's mom and asking her if she knew Bryan Kohberger or if her daughter knew Bryan Kohberger? Like, she was asking those intrusive questions about the case, trying to get her. And what if she did have that information? She would have answered, Ashley. But unfortunately, she said, my daughter, to my knowledge, didn't know him. I didn't know him. But my other daughter went to Washington State University while he was still running around there before he was apprehended on the 30th. But what's your thoughts as a defense attorney of the media doing that and grabbing somebody who is, you know, a decedent's mom and interviewing her after these gag orders and amendments to gag orders? I just want to get a criminal defense attorney's thought on that when it comes to, you know, justice.
That's really interesting, and I have competing thoughts about that. My first, primary function is the Constitution. I look at the Constitution, and freedom of the press is a First Amendment. It's contained within the First Amendment, and the First Amendment is first because it really is the most important. It just raises the importance of it, and I think it's necessary. And why was the First Amendment, codified the way it was? It was to push back against the government, to help the people, you know, put the government in check. And that's what we want to do. I am always suspicious of the government. I love the First Amendment. I love the freedom of the press. And I agree that they must check the government. I represent Congressman George Santos. We are constantly harassed and attacked by the press, but I welcome it. I welcome it because they're doing what the founders, the framers of our Constitution, they're doing exactly what they wanted them to do. Check the government. So I believe in the freedom of the press. I believe Banfield is an aggressive reporter. She goes after stuff. But I also think that you have to weigh that in the balance of the integrity of the investigation, the integrity of the witnesses and the information, by adhering to court orders, like not revealing top secret documents that come into your possession because you have a right to. They're top secret for a reason. So don't reveal that and endanger national security by revealing top secret documents. Like you have to have that balance where the freedom of the press is there to help the public, but now when you're actually hurting the public, so I think they have to self-regulate.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line to walk.
Very difficult. Very difficult.
I say this sometimes in the police arena and in with criminal defense and with prosecution, sometimes the press can be our best friend and then our worst enemy. So it's like it depends on what kind of how far that they go with this stuff, because interviewing someone who is a witness or a potential or even a potential perpetrator, I mean, it has its benefits and its its negatives. So it is what it is. I've seen everything from good to bad, but this last night was in poor taste, and I just couldn't get over that she doubled down and played part 2 and 3 or whatever she played tonight. I won't go look at it. So last night was enough for me. The audio alone, like when you listen to the things that she asked this grieving mother who just lost her daughter to a brutal knife attack, was just beyond my thing. Like I just was like, wow. Anyways, we're here over an hour. Joe, thanks for calling in. I know that you're a busy guy, so thank you for educating us on the criminal defense side. Anything else?
Pleasure.
Anything
My pleasure.
else I want to put into this, Joe, or I think you said it all?
I hope to be back soon. I really miss the show. I miss all of the community, everyone. They're just so wonderful. That's why I try to listen in whenever I can when I get a break.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thank you for joining, and I'll close it up after we say goodbye to Joe Murray, our favorite criminal defense attorney. So thank you for taking the time out tonight, and hopefully we'll see you again, because everybody wants to see your face. All the ladies want to see you. The ladies want to see the silver fox.
All right, I'll be back soon. Thanks again.
Take it easy. There he goes. Joe Murray. Joe Murray's checking out. Jennifer Nobles, yeah, man, unbelievable. And we're going to be covering the trial of Trezell and Jacqueline West. I hope that commences. Supposedly it's supposed to go off after January 30th, but then I just read in one of the newspapers in Bakersfield that it could be weeks before the trial starts. I hope they're wrong about that. Weeks. Come on. We waited so long for justice for our boys, for Sincere and Classic, Orrin and Orson West. All right, guys, I'm going to check out. It's time for me to go to bed. Let me know what you thought of, listen, I don't do these live streams like this often. But really, I came live tonight really because the Banfield thing was bothering me. It was bothering me because it was so unethical in my view. I like News Nation. I like Bryan Enton, but I don't like this kind of reporting. It really gives me a bad taste. It gives me that
oh hell no
taste. It gives me that oh hell no taste. Like there's certain places where you don't go, and you need to have some compassion and some empathy for people who are going through a tough time. And she showed none of that. So, yeah, I really didn't like it, but what am I going to do? It is what it is. All right, guys and girls, as I always like to end these things, thank you to the replay viewers. Thank you to all of the folks who moderated here. I really appreciate you guys. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think about the attorney situation, anything that you want. Leave it down below in the comment section. We always appreciate it. Thank you for joining, and I will see you on the next one. God bless the world. God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially these 4 victims. We send their families strength, prayers, and positive vibes. Ethan, Xana, Kaylee, and Maddie. We're sending your family and the community there, and more importantly, the whole prosecution team for a successful prosecution against Bryan Kohberger. You guys, will see you soon. Peace and love from Crime Time with DutyRon.